This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
Welcome to the American Theater Wing Seminars on Working in the Theater. These seminars are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York on 42nd Street, right in the heart of Times Square, right where Broadway, off-Broadway, and off-Broadway come together to bring the magic of live theater. And the best that is in New York goes out across the country, and the best of the regional theaters across the country come into New York with their productions. So it truly is a cooperation of theater across the country coming from New York. The American Theater Wing is perhaps the longest running service organization in the country. It is devoted to aiding the community, helping the community through live theater. We have many programs. We go into hospitals with live theater from theaters and nightclubs and all kinds of entertainment to bring a bit of magic and a bit of help to those in nursing homes and hospitals, aid centers, both for patients and their staff. We have a Saturday Theater for Children program, which I think is terribly important. It is a program where children in their own neighborhoods come to public schools in the mornings, on Saturday mornings, and they line up. They've bought a ticket to go to the theater. They have made a commitment. They know what it is to go to the theater as a need for it, as a habit. It enriches their vocabulary, it brings another world to them, and it also helps bring both parent and child together as parents cooperate in this program. And these seminars are an outgrowth of the Wing's program of training when people came after the Second World War and they worked at their training, at their tools of what it is to work in the theater. Charlton Heston and Jose Ferrer and all kinds of wonderful people have come out of that program and were part of the program. The Wing this year has also gone abroad, and we co-produced with BBC Open University a Working in the Theater seminar in London. And we've also gone abroad to Moscow, and we are co-sponsoring with the O'Neill Center the exchange of students coming to the O'Neill, and then the Wing, under the auspices of our organization, will come to New York, where these students will then have a workshop production. The Wing is truly a part of the theater, part of the theater's history. Perhaps we are best known for the Tony Awards, which was named in honor of Antoinette Perry, who believed that training in the theater was terribly important. And so this award, which is given every year, is for having achieved excellence in the theater, not for the longest run, and not for the best reviews, but because their peers thought that they had given a wonderful, wonderful, excellent program and a wonderful, excellent performance, whether it was in directing or in stagecraft, in design, whatever it might be. And so that is what this stands for. I'm going to turn our panel over today to Jean Dalrymple, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the American Theater Wing and who is author, director, producer, who's done about everything. has many hats, wears many hats, and very pretty ones as well. And also to Edwin Wilson, who is director of the Center for Advanced Study in the Theater Arts at the Graduate School of City University. And they, in turn, will introduce your panelists to you. I hope you enjoy it. I know I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. We, as you say, we do have a distinguished panel today, and I'd like to begin right away by introducing them. On my far right, a distinguished actress from Great Britain who is known to American audiences for her role as Sarah in Upstairs, Downstairs, the television series. She won the Olivier Award in London for her portrayal of Shirley Valentine, and she's been playing that part here in New York. She also made a film of this, Miss Pauline Collins. To her immediate left, one of New York's finest stage actors. He's been in a number of films, too, but he's delighted New York audiences for 34 years in 61 different plays. He's been in 99 altogether. He is in Lend Me a Tenor at the moment, but he's distinguished himself in Shaw, in a number of classics. Philip Bosco. And to my immediate right, an opera star, a film star in a number of Mel Brooks films as well as others, a star currently in Born Yesterday, but she's been in a number of musicals as well as stage plays, Madeline Kahn. Jean?
On my far left is a young lady I love very much. She came to me as a more or less beginner. It says on the information they gave me that she made her Broadway debut in Do Re Mi, but I think she made it in my production of Carousel at City Center, and she also played there for me in Finian's Rainbow. Yes, and she was wonderful. She came to me like a gift from heaven. Just the person I needed for either one of those spots. Just a wonderful actress. She's now in Into the Woods, that great big hit. And I know that I haven't seen it, and I feel terrible about it, but I'll see it right away. You're in trouble. Next to her is Joan Allen, who, as you all know, is a big, big hit in Heidi's Chronicles. And she's from Chicago. And she was perfectly wonderful in Burn This. I remember that. But she broke my heart. And then the Nightingale sang. You were just adorable. And right next to me is a wonderful actor that you all know, of course, because everyone has seen him over and over.
Boringly so.
No, never boring, never. And he's now in a wonderful hit. But before that, I want to tell you, he won 5 Golden Globes and 7 Emmys. I really think that must be a record for any one actor. And I do congratulate you, Ed. And right now, of course, as you all know, he's in Born Yesterday. And it's a big hit. And he's perfectly wonderful. And, of course, Madeline's in it, too.
Is she?
This program...
Go ahead.
Yeah, this program is working in the theater, and we want to talk to these artists about their training, about their experience in the theater, the way their careers have evolved. And I'd like to start with a question for the people who are listening. I think it would be very helpful, very informative, to know that moment in your career when you were younger, when you were certain or you knew, perhaps for the first time, that acting was going to be your career, your profession. Philip, I'm going to start with you. Do you remember the event or the production you were in or the moment when that happened?
I've been asked this several times in the past, as you probably imagine. And the answer that I've come up with is usually the production I did when I was in the last year of grammar school, the 8th grade. It was the first time I was ever on the stage, and it was in one of those old, grade school plays, happened to be called the Fairy Cobbler, in which I played Machiavelli the cat, in this huge black cat outfit with a very long tail. And apparently I stole the show because of the tail. And I imagine that going home after the show with my mother and being complimented, my mother rather, being complimented by her friends and whatnot, made me feel terribly good. And I guess that spurred me on to go into another play, and one after that. And I think that's the beginning of it. Because other than that, I can't think of any single event that drove me forward. It was just kind of a cumulative thing.
But were you constantly in plays after that?
After that, yes.
All through high school?
Yes, all through high school, and then into college. That was kind of the beginning.
So you never stopped?
No, never did. Can't afford to. I'd catch up.
Pauline, what about you?
Well, curious enough, I had a similar experience, but mine was when I was 8. And my mother used to direct amateur dramatics, and there was a girl of 16 playing an 8 or 10-year-old, and she had to drop out of the play, which was a comedy called The Dear Departed. And I took on this role of the child at very short notice, at about a week's notice. And I remember the first time I went in front of an audience, it was such a marvelous feeling to have, like, these lovers out there that I didn't know. And there was a kind of string which tied us together. And I remember thinking, I want to do this. And so I did.
Madeline, what about you?
Yeah, no, I thought sort of like 4 different moments, but the one that's clearest isn't the first one, really. I mean, there was a great time I had in camp one time as a kid, and there was a time when I was really little, but the time when it really clicked, I think, was a student musical in college of Guys and Dolls. I had been having some problems in college, but I got to do this student musical that was not, in other words, one of the shows put on by the faculty, but one put on by the students. And I was really thrilled to get the role of Adelaide, and I promptly got the measles and thought I would not be able to be in it. But there was a chance I'd be well in time, and they waited for me, or they tried to wait. And I recovered just in time to attend, the last couple of rehearsals, but I had prepared the role in my sickbed, just tried to envisage the whole production. And so that when I got there, I wasn't very familiar with the whole, process of the rehearsal. And when I got out in front of the audience and they responded so, I thought, it was like a roller coaster. I remember being just shocked and thrilled. And I thought, it was just amazing to me. And I didn't assume that I would make a living doing this at all. But that was the first moment when I really felt this exchange with an audience, which was just absolutely amazing. So that must have been the beginning.
Tell them about Kiss Me Kate.
Well, then we have the matter of getting into the business, which is a whole other matter altogether. and later on, I figured one way of maybe getting into the business would be to go to an audition and sing and get a part in the chorus and get my union card so I could then go to union auditions. And I wasn't a union member yet, so they were having an open call to be in the chorus of a revival of Kiss Me Kate at City Center, and I sang, I don't remember what, but I did get it.
Your voice was fabulous.
Thank you.
We just yelled, grab her.
I got into the chorus, yes.
Yeah.
They kept putting me in the back, though, and I'd like to know why.
Nancy, what about you in terms
Oh
of...
gosh, my mind is swimming. I was one of those students. My aunt was a pianist, so I started piano lessons at 4, and then I studied dance. And my first production was the HMS Pinafore when I was in kindergarten. And I do remember at the time that the little blonde got to sing the big number. And I didn't like that. But I thought it was always...
She went with the producer.
Oh, yeah, she went with the producer. But it was never considered a serious profession in my home. So all during the years I studied, and then I went to high school and college, I was going to be a teacher, I guess. And then finally, during college, I did get into a summer theater for 2 seasons where we did 12 musicals a summer. And that was the beginning. I went, I like this. My parents, till the day they died, kept asking me to go back to college to learn another profession, something serious. We're not kidding. But it was that summer. I really, when I knew it might be possible, that I
Well, you
really
had a
fell in love with it.
wonderful voice. You still have a wonderful
Thank
voice,
you.
but I remember very well when you, like Madeline, just opened your mouth and everybody said, "That's the girl."
Oh, thank you.
And you, Joan?
Well, I think it started for me in high school also. I basically wanted to be on the cheerleading squad because I was very shy and I thought I could meet boys that way. And they would ask me, I would become popular. I was from this very small town and that was sort of the big deal. Well, I didn't make it. And so I tried to decide what else I could concoct to meet boys and maybe get kissed because my sister had all these boyfriends and I could talk to them, but any time I saw a boy, I like choked. And so I thought, well, if I could get in a play, maybe, you know, it would be romantic and it would be some young high school fellow that I would like, and that never happened. But the first play I did then was a one-act play called Once Upon a Playground in the Midwest, and I don't know if that's all over the country. In high schools, they have what they call contest plays, and one-act contest and speech contest. And every Saturday you get on a bus and you go to another school in the area, and you do poetry or prose, or they had one-act play contests, and that was the first play that I did, and it was about a bunch of girls who were sort of misfits. They all had something wrong with them, and I had braces that they painted on my teeth because I didn't really have braces. And I just thought it was very exciting. You know, we got to go on the bus and, you know, go to all these different schools, and the whole experience of acting with the other people and the girls. There was one boy in the cast. It was just so fun to me. It was just, it felt so together.
Who got the boy?
The girl with the funny nose. Yes, the girl who had a funny nose. That was her failing. Anyway, that was the first.
It was her failing?
Everybody had something
her
wrong
funny nose
with them.
was her failing.
Yeah, somebody
Well,
had.
it worked in this sense, didn't
Yes, she got the guy.
And how did you start?
Mine is as Madeline said, mine's kind of a two-stage thing. No direct, sharp realization. I always loved to be chosen, but where I came from, you didn't volunteer. You always were chosen. So even through high school, you didn't do that. And I never felt I could perform adequately to ever consider it a career. Went to a college where there was no theater department, but extracurricular plays. And there I found myself during summer school volunteering to read for Murder in the Cathedral, and I ended up doing the lead. And it became transported by it, but I still didn't think of being able to make a living that way. I finally went in the Army after a number of these plays, and came out of the Army and joined a group in Chicago, and about the 4th or 5th show, we were doing Volpone, and I was Volpone. And the theater lawyer, big gangling guy, came up to me after the performance one night, and he kind of looking at me like this, and he said, "It was very, very good, very good." I said, "Thank you, thank you." He had been very ungiving to me prior to that time, and he said, "You think you'll make theater your career?" And I looked at him, I said, "Jerk. What the hell am I doing here?" So at that point, I think I realized I was going to make it in my life.
Shall we ask about auditions?
Go ahead.
I think the one thing when you start a career is when you go to your first audition, when you read backstage and showbiz and so forth, and you finally go. And I'd love to ask, do you do that in England also?
Absolutely. I auditioned for Shirley Valentine.
Oh,
so
did
you
you
go
really?
on doing it.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. Tell about your first audition.
My first one, it was difficult for me to enter the theatre because I trained as a teacher in a drama school, so I didn't get the exposure that the drama students did. And I remember I wrote to millions and millions of reps. You know, do you have reps here? Repertory theatres, which is like stock theatres.
Unfortunately, not millions and millions of.
Well, we don't have millions and millions anymore. But this
We'd
is
like
a
to
long
have
time
more.
ago, isn't it?
Yes, we'd like to have more.
So I wrote to loads of them, and eventually one in Windsor agreed to audition me for a general audition, and I went, and I did some piece or other. And it was a very nice woman who auditioned me, and as I left, there was a very voluptuous girl came up the stairs, very dark and beautiful, with huge bosoms, you know, and a wonderful figure. And about a week later, I got a letter from this theatre saying from the woman who auditioned me, if I was as she remembered me, then she would like me to play an Arabian maidservant. So I rang back to Joan Riley, who was running the theatre, and I said, I would love to hope that I was as you remembered me, but I said, I'm sure that you're thinking of the girl after me who was huge and beautiful and dark. And she said, no, I wasn't thinking of the shape of you, I was thinking of your comedy timing. And it was me that she wanted. And so I played an Arabian, a rather fair, slim Arabian, in those days, Arabian maidservant, and that was my first job, and it was wonderful. And I got £6 a week, which is about $8. And I thought I'd died and gone to heaven.
How many weeks did you play?
6.
Oh, that's quite a run.
So that was my first audition, Jean.
Nancy, what was your first audition?
Professionally? When I came to New York, the first audition was for Gus Schermer. I had come and was studying opera when I first came to New York, so I wasn't even auditioning. I just was studying and doing workshops. And I read in one of the little trades, they were seeing people for The Boyfriend off Broadway. So I learned a little number with an English accent, which I thought was very keen. And I ran down there. I was the last one of the day. I just came tearing in like a little mad person. I sang this song as fast as I could with my English accent, and then I danced a chorus. And they were stunned. I mean, I've never had such a deathly reaction. I did get the job, which then in turn, on a year passed, I did that show, and then it was my honeymoon night. Gus Schermer again called me again and asked me to do an off-Broadway play, which really got my career going. But it's so wonderful when you don't know anything. I mean, I just prepared this dumb little song.
Let me ask a question. Where did you learn to do the English accent?
I have no idea.
In between of loving the theater and coming to a point where you can audition.
I worked in 2 summers. I went to Northwestern and studied.
That's what I went.
Though I was studying then to be an opera singer and more serious music. Took 1 acting class at Northwestern, and then. But I have a very good. I did a lot of reviews. I have a very good ear for. Just have a good ear for sounds and accents, and I went to the movies. I imitated somebody. I don't know who, but and it was wonderful.
Joan?
Well, my experience has been sort of different. I think I sort of consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world because when I was a junior in college, John Malkovich, who I'd gone to college with, called me and said, do you want to come up and do a play this summer with the newly formed Steppenwolf Theater Company? And I said, oh, well, sure. Sure, I'll do it. And it was sort of a crazy Wally Shawn play called Our Late Night, which was very bizarre and funny. And after that, I went back to college for another year, and then they asked me to join the company permanently. And so I never really, the first 7 or 8 years of my career, I never really auditioned. It was so marvelous because it created such a secure feeling. I was very shy, and I didn't really know what I was. If I hadn't gotten that phone call, I don't know what I would have done, where I would be today, because it was a sort of a ready-made environment with people and actors that it was a family. I was brought into another family immediately, and we picked our own plays, and we were assured a certain amount of work every year, and it was it the most beautiful way to get to start. It really was wonderful.
What was yours, Madeline?
That is very nice, I must say. That is very nice. And I think, well, that's perfect for, maybe Shirley MacLaine could tell us why you had this good fortune. But I know, really. That's okay. I'm sure my way was perfect for me. No, well, I don't know. You know, there are some auditions I've done professionally which are very interesting. But the first audition I ever did really was for a scholarship to college. I was in high school, and I was in the one drama class that you sort of took in high school, where I was silent for most of the year. And but I did raise my hand one or two times, and the teacher noticed something about me, and she suggested that I audition for this drama scholarship to Hofstra College. I was going to go to Queens College, a city college, and be a teacher, and that was that. And I thought her idea was one of the worst ideas I have ever heard of in my life. Audition? I resisted the idea, and I think my mother forced me to go. Because it would be a more special college experience than the one I would have had at a city college, and couldn't afford to go to anything but a city college. So you had to do 2 monologues. I didn't know what that really was, but I went to the library and I found 2 monologues, one serious and one funny, as they say, and terrified. It rained that day. That's enough for me. I'm not going. It's raining. You're going. You are going. And I went, and it was really just like real life. You step out on the stage of the theater at Hofstra College campus, and there were some people out there in the dark. I don't know who they were, some few professors, I suppose. And I just stood out there, and I said first the serious one, which I did not understand at all. And, I mean, consciously, I must have understood it on some level. Then I did the humorous one, and they laughed. That was a clue. You know, I don't know. I thought, oh, this is something. This is interesting. And I got the scholarship. You know, and, you know, to college, free tuition.
Wonderful.
So that was really where it began.
Mm-hmm. You, Phil?
Well, I can think of 2 auditions that are memorable in my life. The very first one that I recall was my first acquaintance with the university that I eventually wound up graduating from, Catholic University in Washington, D.C. This was in 1948, and I just graduated from high school. And may I preface this remark by saying, when you asked before what was the first, what got you into, I really should have extended my remarks to include my high school experience, because I met a gentleman there who was a retired actor, professional actor, named James Marr. A wonderful man, as I came to love very much. And he kind of instilled the love of the theater in me, because he regaled me with all kinds of stories, and he took a particular liking to me. And I think it was through his influence that I really decided to pursue it in a serious way. Anyway, I went to college, and I hadn't turned 18 yet. I was just 17, just brand new and wet behind the ears. And I went down to the university in September, I think it was, and they had already cast the production of King Lear. That was the first show of the major show of the season. And I was kind of devastated, but I went into the rehearsal anyway, and there were still several small parts open. To make a long story short, I was persuaded then to audition for one of the smaller remaining parts. So I did. They had an extended thrust stage, and I went down and I did something from Lear. And my recollection of the director was Basil Langton, whom many of you may remember. Yeah. He was very flamboyant then, probably is so today. he had a huge scarf wrapped around, and his shirt was open to the waist. He was very dashing and daring. So I remember doing it. Of course, I was terribly nervous, and he was in the very back row of the theater, and he walked all the way down the stage, and I was waiting for this pronouncement, and the very first words out of his mouth were, "When did you injure your voice?" Kind of a letdown, sort of. And I never did know, and don't to this day know what it was. Anyway, that's the one. But the other one, the other audition that is meaningful to me just went past my mind. I've forgotten what it is. I'm sorry. I was just about to speak. I forgot what it couldn't have been very memorable.
Make one up.
It's while you remember.
My wife is going to get me for this. She says, "It's in my mind."
Our auditions that horrible, our auditions that devastating to an actor, and knowing this, how do you prepare for them? Can you ask?
Look at me.
I am. I'm looking at you because you've been very quiet.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, they are horrible. And,
Did you audition for Born yesterday?
No.
Why not?
Isabel.
I meant to talk to you about that.
Well, according to Frank Rich, I should have.
According to us, you didn't have to.
No, indeed.
I generally have been a failure at auditions, and granted, there have been some memorable moments in my life when I did make. I've done very little auditioning in life, and I guess I get angry and I get very tense, and I don't know how to relax and show the final performance in the audition, which is, I gather, where we should be. But there was even a time when I was performing Threepenny at the Delice, and a friend of mine got up a company of players to do a staged reading of Edward II. So we worked and we rehearsed and we rehearsed, and we finally took it before Lucille Lortel to put it on her Monday night series there. Dark Monday night. I'd been doing Threepenny there for a year and a half. And she told Bob Kidd, who headed our group, said, well, she would put it on if he replaced me with another young actor that she knew his work. And I, of course, was playing Mortimer, the lead. And, so it was a blow, and the guys discussed it, and I said, look, I've got a job, Threepenny. You guys can get some notice by this. Go ahead, replace it. So they voted on it, and they agreed to accept the offer, and they did it. I don't know if they ever worked again, but that's the kind of luck I have with auditions. Here's to you.
All of you...
I want to ask if did you audition for Mr. Peachum?
Yeah. See, we had done a pirated version in Chicago. And I had the chutzpah to go and see Carmen and Sally Chase, the producers, and say I was the Peachum there. So they looked at me as if, you pirate, you pirate. You. Said, well, maybe we'll have an opening for you. And several months later, an opening as one of the crooks, and they did that for about 6 weeks, and then I went in as Peachum.
Yes. He was a wonderful Mr. Peachum.
I remembered the second one. Can I just say it briefly? So I don't look like... here I am sitting with egg all over my face now. The second one, now it's come back to me. It was the John Golden auditions, which you remember.
Yes.
I was still in high school, so it must have been in the early 40s.
That's right.
And in those days, I wish they'd continue that. That was a wonderful practice in those days. And many people, it was on 13th Street where we did it. I've forgotten the name of it was a basement of a church.
Right.
In any event, I auditioned, we had to audition with a humorous piece and a serious piece, and I remember them to this day. The humorous one was a monologue from It Pays to Advertise, and the serious one was Shylock. And I remember being asked at the end of it, of course I was rather summarily dismissed, and he said, why in heaven's name did you choose to audition with Shylock? I was every bit of 16 years old, I think. I said, I liked the speech. I did the, the famous monologue. Anyway, that was it.
I wanted to, all of you are now, and you certainly have been, involved in plays and productions in which comedy is a major element. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about, or ask you about, the problems and the perils and the joys of playing in comedy and the difficulties in terms of audience response and so forth. Do you want to start off?
Problems, perils, and what?
Joys.
Joy. Well, I'll just say what leaps to mind. It's probably a vast topic. It's difficult, and largely because it's, I think, part of your job not to show that it's difficult so that people can enjoy themselves. They can just sit back, in my opinion, and not feel that they have to laugh. They can laugh if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. And that way you provide a nice setting for them. And so the work that you do is, I think, has to be pretty well crafted and grounded in real, just serious work as you would do in a straight role. And you may not get credit for that. That may not be recognized or seen. You may, in fact, have to feel rage or pain or something like that in order to make the joke work. And so there you are, feeling the necessary, in my opinion, rage or pain, let's say, and you never really get to release that, or you never get relief from it, really, in the way that you might in a straight play. I enjoy doing comedy. I mean, there's obviously something about it that feels right to me. I feel suited to it, whatever the thing that is required. It comes sort of naturally to me, so I haven't broken it down completely yet, but it's sort of like making the dessert for a meal rather than the, the main course. And you're the one who makes this bonbon or this souffle, and it's very hard to do, and yet it's only the dessert, you know what I mean? That type of thing. So far, that's the most important thing I could say about it at this point.
Absolutely right, Madeline.
You're on stage all by yourself,
Yeah.
Shirley, and a lot of it is comedy. So you must
Yes.
have to deal with that, and I'm sure it changes from night to night in terms of the audience.
Indeed, it does. I mean, first of all, I agree absolutely with what Madeline says, and it's much harder to make a meringue than a roast, I think. And I think comedy has always been regarded by many people as the poor relation in the theatre, and as an easy thing to do. And it's not at all easy, comedy.
Oh, it's very difficult.
First of all, it has to be rooted completely in reality. And secondly, you're more aware of the audience's judgment in a comedy because you are supposed to make them laugh. Now, I think we should not forget that people also smile, but you can't hear a smile. You can only feel a smile. And therefore, I'm lucky in Shirley Valentine because I can see you a lot, and even when people don't laugh, I can see them smile, which is good. But it has always been a source of amazement to me that people on the whole in England get knighted for playing Shakespeare. And most particularly the serious roles in Shakespeare. And I think that comedy, maybe we're banging on a bit too much about this because that's what we play, but I think comedy has a much directer line to the heart of the audience, and many playwrights, like Willie Russell, for instance, who wrote Shirley Valentine, particularly choose comedy through which to express very serious issues, because it seems to be the way life is, you know. And I mean, in the midst of the terrible dramas in life, we often laugh, don't we?
I'm always struck by the story, which is attributed to John Barrymore, but I'm sure it may indeed have been any other number of other actors. On his deathbed, one of his closest friends was over him and asking, he was obviously in the last hours or minutes of his life, and this person leaned over, saw him, and said, John or Jack, how is it? Is it difficult dying? He said, no, dying is easy. Playing comedy is hard.
That was Edmund Gwenn.
It was Edmund Gwenn. Well, he was close.
Well, I
30,
think,
40 pounds.
I think also you have to be highly trained to do comedy because there's an essence of timing that comes into that. And you don't know that timing unless you have worked in front of so many audiences and done so many plays that you bring this timing to it. And I think that's the important thing. And you've talked about audience so much.
Pauline has to play with herself in terms of the,
As they say.
as they say. But everyone else here has to play.
But I don't.
You
play
don't.
with
You play with the other
I play with the audience.
That's
play
right.
with the audience.
And the audience is
That's
really
the timing I was talking
an
about.
integral part of any performance, but obviously, particularly when you're on your own. And, you know, that's who we do it for. We do it for you, the audience. We don't do it for each other or for the critics. We act for you. And you, the audience, are the co-stars. Even when there are 10 of us on the stage, you're the 11th member. Or the
But
13th.
the thing that Isabel was talking about in terms of timing, really the ensemble that people have to develop, you in the play you're in now, Ed and Madeline in their play, and have you done a lot of comedy, or is this something, because I was speaking of Joan, because the Heidi Chronicles is very funny in many places.
Yeah.
Is that a new experience for you? There were funny things in Burn This too, as well.
Right. I think I've done plays that have more comic parts or element, you know, part comedy, you know, that turn serious or sad or whatever, recently. And Heidi certainly is an example of, you know, has a lot of comedy, and I feel like it's very hard to do, and very hard to do well, and very difficult when I think what Madeline said was so good, that you need to allow the audience to laugh or not, and not, you know, you have to be grounded in a very real world. And I think basically the timing is coming from a very real place. And if you think too much about, whenever I think too much about a comic moment, I lose the laugh every time. If it even enters my head, you know, and I may, technically from the outside, the other actors will go, well, it looked the same to me, but there's something in your brain that the audience picks up and knows, and it's very, I find it, boy, sometimes it's extremely painful if you put yourself out, and even if you put yourself out and it just like falls flat, I've been devastated many moments in the Heidi Chronicles where I thought, God, boy, I really, and even if I thought I did it well and they didn't laugh on a particular night, it's just like, it's very hard. I die a little bit inside, and you have to sort of regroup and go, it's okay, you know, carry on.
No margin for error in comedy.
There really isn't.
When you do a
It's very
serious show,
delicate. It's like lace.
you know, you can make several mistakes and not really feel terribly put out because you figure, well, you'll get them at the end. But in comedy, it's every moment you've got to get it.
I wanted to ask you.
Especially in Me A Tenor, as you're doing it now.
Yes.
How did you arrive at that pace doing rehearsal?
Well, I must credit the director, Jerry Zaks, primarily with that. He's an absolutely wonderful director for this. I assume he does as well with others. My only experience with him is in this.
He's awfully
and
good.
he's absolutely wonderful for this kind of thing, because his attention to detail and the precision is like a master sergeant in the army. He's just wonderful. He will not let you rest until, you know, the thing works properly, and he's absolutely demoniacal about pacing and precision.
Were you able to get that pace, that rhythm during rehearsal?
It takes a while. No, it takes. We played 4 weeks in Baltimore before we came into New York. In fact, we followed Ed and Madeline.
We made it easy for them.
Well, we didn't do as well in Baltimore as we did.
Tell us about it.
It took us quite a while to get there.
I wanted to ask Ed about, in terms of comedy, the difference between comedy in terms of television and comedy in terms of the live theater.
Well, you have to remember that the comedy I did in television was with an audience of 300 people. And, you know, when we first started Mary Tyler Moore, you know, we'd do the shtick and very few laughs. And the seasoned director we had, Jay Sandrich, and some of the producers said, wait till we go on the air, wait a few weeks, they'll start to know you, they'll come in. And slowly, gradually, they'd come in, and it would be this lovely warmth every week. I mean, it was the ideal, from what Pauline was saying earlier, of that symbiotic relationship. And I mean, they were laying it in front of you. And we had the best of all possible worlds, a 300-member audience, which is a lovely size, and putting it on camera. people have postulated to me that they're beginning to think that maybe audiences have lost the ability to laugh. I don't know, because I haven't been appearing before live audiences. But I talk about the gross variances we have in our show. Up one night, down the next, and we can get out there and we, you know, the first, and you leave that little crack so that they can have their laugh if they want it. Boom, boom. Boom. And finally, I don't know about the rest of the cast. I know with me, I said, God damn, you know, so, all right, I'll just play the hell out of this. So we play the hell out of it like a juggernaut, and then, you know, then finally we go into a nice, sweet scene with Madeline and the reporter, and the laughs start coming in big, and that's close to the first act intermission. You come on in the second act, and it's big, and I can't figure it out. I don't know whether they've lost, whether they have to come on, whether you have to do this for a while or what.
I think that actually sometimes audiences don't want you to throw too hard at them, and I've found through the years, and it was an English actor who taught me this, called John Standing, who was a great comedy actor and farceur, and he said he learned it from Rex Harrison, and that if you have a very difficult audience, you should just go back, and let them come out to you, and then gradually, because they get a bit frightened. Some audiences are frightened of the closeness of the relationship between the actor and the audience, and therefore they want to come gradually to you, like a frightened puppy or something.
I knew this would be worthwhile for me.
You learned something.
Well, I think that great comedians tell the audience before they speak, listen, kids, this is going to be funny. And then they say it, and the audience laughs. Especially the stand-up comics. That's the way they all do it, I notice. And it's a very good thing to do in the theater, too. I know, I played comedy when I was a young girl. And I used to go out there and say to the audience, this is going to be very funny. And they would laugh.
Oh, you did this, huh?
Yeah.
So you fall into that line of great comedians, huh?
I'm talking about 60 years ago.
Well, you never lose it.
It was
Talk
easier
about
then.
the audience. What's the difference in the reaction of the English audience to the American here?
Well, I found the American audiences here are much more immediate and voluble, and that's probably to do with the difference between our two nationalities, because the English will write me letters and say how much they enjoy it, but they sit more quietly back. And I think American audiences let you know immediately if they love it or hate it. I have to say that I really am enjoying playing here. I mean, it's just wonderful to be in New York, and the socks were scared off me, of course, before I came here, because I'd heard how tough they were.
Really?
But I love you.
Nancy, what about The Witch?
The Witch!
The Witch.
This has been great fun for me. This incorporates everything we've been talking about today. I mean, I did not want to go audition for this. I mean, I ran right smack into that. I thought, they know who I am. There was a moment of that, and then I had to realize that James Lapine, indeed, did not know who I was, or didn't know me very well.
This is the director of Into the Woods.
He directed and wrote the book. So I did go meet him, and he was gracious. He did it so nicely. He said, I am not very familiar with your voice. Would you sing a few bars? So I thought, I could do that, which I did, and I got the job. And he reminded me again the other day, he said, don't try to be funny. I mean, I get those reminders a lot, because I do like being over the top, I must admit. It's a terrible trait. He said, you're already funny. You're already funny. He said, just trust it and go do it, because I have a tendency to kind of overwork it if I don't think I'm really quite getting to them. And in this part, and they have written some outrageously funny things, but on the most part, they want you to play it real straight and not give in to that, and it will be funny anyway. Yeah. And so I have to relearn that lesson all the time. And Ted Knight, when I did the series, was a wonderful teacher for me, because he said, I can see it in you. You want to be funny so badly. He said, just be nice. He said, really be a person on this show, and then they'll let you'll do some funny things. And it paid off so well. In fact, television helped me to be a more honest performer, I think. It allowed me to really trust being a human being and a person, and instead of always working big or whatever you feel you have to do in a musical, it really allowed me that ease, what you both are talking about, Pauline and Madeline, allowing the audience to relax and take you as they will.
Now, unlike,
Yes.
unlike television, where you did have that live audience, which you said was such an ideal experience, in film you don't, though. And so that does make a big difference, I'm sure, in terms of...
No, it's murder in film. There's the expert.
Yeah. I think in the material itself, this is what I do. You see something, as though it were a piece of music, which is much more definite, obviously. There are these notes, and you sing the notes. But in that same way, there is the material, there's the text and the situation and so on, and you have that, and you see it yourself, what you think the truth of it is, and what you think is humorous about it. And you do think something's humorous about it, because I think simply playing it straight is different. There is a difference. You can turn something humorous into something serious. You can do that, and suddenly some lovely English comedy can become very maudlin. I mean, I've seen it happen. So there is something that you do where you do understand that it's humorous. But then you just sort of do the piece. And as you envision it in your mind, without the audience there. In a film, there isn't one. Actually, there are people, but they have to be very quiet, so they can't respond. So you have to just do it as you see it, and as you've maybe worked it out with a director, and allow it to be seen by the camera. And you kind of give up the response. But you do the truth that you see in your mind, as though you were painting a canvas.
Don't you think acting is very mental?
I do.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I do.
I would say, in addition to what Madeline said, that with three camera television, when you have good writer producers and a good director, as we did with Mary, who are experienced in the business, all that week they're bringing you along, and no matter if they've seen it 50, 100 times, when you're doing it right on the line, they do a laugh. They're doing you a laugh. They're bringing you along. They're giving you that little denotation that you're there, you're in there, you're in there, so that you don't begin to self-doubt at the silence. Then you deliver it to the audience. In film, I gather what happens is they give you the laugh during rehearsal. During rehearsal, they're giving you the laugh, or they should be. I would think
Sometimes it's not good. Sometimes you please the crew, and this is the worst thing you can do. In a film, you do things to make those people laugh, and it really is not the truth of the material. And you do things to make those people laugh, you make them laugh, and when the movie is made, it is not funny.
Well, then the director has to know that.
Well, yes, but they often don't. They often don't. They often don't. Sometimes they do.
You found that with yourself?
I certainly have.
Do you sometimes watch rushes?
I haven't done that. I mean, excuse me, I have not.
Oh,
and that's why I'm a wet blanket. You know I'm a wet blanket. You know I am. And I don't try to please. I try to, I see it, it looks desperate to me. I'm sorry, but it does. Trying to please the people who are standing there. That maybe you will please them, but I mean, deliberately doing that so that you know they'll laugh, and that's your proof that you've done it well, as opposed to really dwelling on the task at hand and the material at hand. I don't just try to get the approval. That's not what I do, and I very often don't get it, but I have to believe, well, anyway, I made the choice that what I'm doing is right. And I have to say that invariably, in my case, it has been right, and therefore, I think I've escaped scathing notices in some very bad films. I have escaped. I floated away. You know, in some really bad films.
Jumping from films and television to the theater. What brought you here? Nancy and Ed? What brought Madeline? Starting with the agent. Did an agent call and say, why don't you come back to Broadway? Why don't you come back to the theater?
During this
For Into the Woods, for example.
Yes, it was just that. But I had seen Into the Woods right as it opened, and I went, I could do that. And we all know at the theater today, I mean, there are very few musicals. They're just... So now that has become a wonderful job of coming into an already existing show. So I kind of kept track of it. Bernadette's leaving, who's coming. I mean, every now and then I'd just make a phone call. And finally they called and said, yes, they were looking for new people, and was I interested? Because it meant relocating again. But it was at a very good time for me. I needed to do something different. I really wanted to get back here.
Ed?
I was fatigued from the Brandons of the world, and needed a rest from TV. And they, an agent and a couple of producers in New York had been trying for about a year to put me and Madeline together in this show. And I had nothing better to do, and the thought of working with her was magic. What a mistake I made. I'm amazed I'm alive to tell it today. And we got together and never regretted it. Not that
What about
part of
you? Is he that tough?
No.
Not at all. See the
No,
difference?
I'm the bad
She's the tough one.
No, you're not. I've been wanting to get back on the stage for a few years. I live in New York and always have, and have been in many productions, but not in several years. And the idea of actually working in the same town that I live in really became very interesting to me. And I just didn't find what I thought I might find in TV in my couple of experiences there. The movies that I had been doing in the past few years were very disappointing, and I very much wanted to get back on the stage, and tried in a couple of different cases, didn't get chosen. And this was really something, because Garson Kanan came to me and asked me to do this. So I was floored.
Oh, we're delighted that you all did. We're going to have to take a break right now, and you can stand up and stretch, but don't go away, because we'll come right back again
Above all, don't
with
lose
questions for the panelists, and I'm sure there are lots of them.
Bad form.
So just quickly do whatever you have to do and come back in your seats again. You are safe.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
securities and escorting.
We're back at the American Theater Wing seminars on working in the theater, which are coming to you from the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. And this is a most distinguished panel of performers discussing what it is to work in the theater. And we've now been talking about so many things that are important to the audience and important to the students of the theater. We had stopped when we were discussing the difference of working in California and working in New York, working in movies or television and working in a live theater. And three of our panelists have come this season to work in the theater. And I think we talked to everybody here about that. But now let me go back and continue this with the theater people that have not come from TV or movies to work in the theater. Would you prefer going back and doing the same thing there, or do you prefer working in live theater here?
Well,
whether it's here or Chicago or any place, live theater versus the other.
I prefer live theater. I mean, it's where I feel the most comfortable, and it can be. It's very gratifying, the immediacy of it, and I mean, it is something that I've done the most of. You know, I've done it since I was like 14 or 15 now, and so I feel very grounded in that area. I think I find film. I've done a little film work. I find it's a very different way of working. It's a different kind of concentration that you have to have, and I find that sort of challenging because I don't really understand how you do it. You know, it's long hours of waiting and working 5 minutes, and it takes. I think it's very difficult to work in film, from my experience of it, and I think I have a lot more understanding and compassion for what I used to consider mediocre film performances. I think it's harder. It's much harder to do than I ever imagined.
So. I think it was very difficult.
I think it's a very hard medium to work in, and so I find it sort of, when I do work in it, it's sort of challenging, and it's sort of on-the-job training and trying to hone and develop other skills that are different than in the theater, and so I find it sort of challenging that way.
My views are very similar to Joan's. I actually don't. I had to split it, I think, to discuss it from my point of view. I love to do films because the money is so much more than you ever get in the theater. It's I guess, a reflection of our times, but you can make more in a film, even at the level that I work at, fairly small roles. You make more in 1 week of movie making than you can make with the single exception of my Broadway show now, where I'm getting a fairly decent salary. And most of the work I've done on the stage has either been at the Circle or Roundabout or some equivalent institutional theater, and you get very badly paid, I'm sorry to say. Well, the argument usually is, you wanted to do it, so what are you complaining about? And I'm not really complaining. It's just that the discrepancy is so great between the two. But artistically speaking, I don't like to do films at all. I think that they're absolutely a totally different experience than acting on stage. And I for myself, I don't really think it's acting in the same sense. I don't presume to be an expert at any of this, so forgive me if I sound quasi-pompous about it. I'm not. I really don't mean to be. But what little I do know about acting in films is it's really more behaving than acting. I wish I had a nickel for every time I've been told, and I've heard others who have similar backgrounds been told, stop acting. What are you doing? Take it easy. You're too big. Relax. Everything is too... Well, I said, my heavens, we spent most of our formative years learning how to do these things. This is what an actor's supposed to do, to be somewhat larger than life, to be able to project his voice to the back of the house. Don't ask me not to do it. How can I? This is what you're paying me for. But it's really a completely different experience. And it's not satisfying at all in the same sense that doing a play is, where you go on, you are, let's face it, the star, regardless of the size of your part. Once the rehearsal is all done and the stage manager takes over the show, it's the actor's show. In the movies, it isn't. It's really you're kind of like the last thing on the bill. They spend an enormous amount of time on lights and positions and the weather, and it's almost at the very end they say, where are the actors? Okay, let's go. And then you've got to do it. And if, God forbid, if you shouldn't do it in 3 takes, it's like, what's happening? Come on, there's a lot of money involved here, So I hate it in that sense.
That's very true, but I think that's one of the reasons why I was always glad to give up theater whenever I did, because of the anarchy that I found prevailing. That director was not there, the stage manager wasn't strong enough, and you had 18, 20, 25 animals, as they refer to you in film, running around amok. And I longed for that director to come back and put that. I remember seeing Ruth Gordon's in The Matchmaker. And in those days, of course, we were on twofers, so I went finally to see the Matchmaker. And I saw anarchy on that stage. I mean, it was like the week they closed. Anarchy. And I think every show is capable of it, and I think it's...
That's irresponsible.
It is, yeah.
That's
my
very
experience hasn't been
very
quite like that. I would say the reverse. I think that's rather the exception than the rule.
Yes, I would agree.
Most actors I know are fairly disciplined. And,
Today, I think there's much more discipline in the theater than there used to be even 5 years ago.
Really?
They used to go away and just leave the play and the actors to do what they wanted and not pay much attention. Now the original director comes back and watches and makes note and calls a rehearsal.
Maybe I've been lucky, but my experience...
I'd say you've been lucky.
My experience has been that's not really the case most of the time.
There are so many questions that are waiting to be asked that we'll now go to them, but there's so much more in the discussion. Maybe we'll get back to that, too.
We didn't.
But we'll come up and ask your first question.
My name is Anna Goldwasser, and I'd like to ask anyone, how do you bring new meaning to what is essentially a repetitive rendering of the same thing day after day? How do you keep it fresh? And I have heard already that it's the audiences are always different, but I would like something a little bit more than that, something personal from someone.
The audience is always different, but I find that I'm always different too every day. Every day I'm dealing with something else, and our show is a real company show. Everyone has a wonderful part, and everyone really has to contribute. We have a lot of people, like this year, a lot of people were sick, so there are new people on stage every night. I mean, I've been in the show 4.5 months, and I've not had the same cast, I don't think, twice. And the director has come back. I mean, we really have worked. But I love it. I mean, I've never gotten bored in a performance. There is always something. There's always some little thing. And it usually starts with me. Some little feeling I have that's different, and it's just, I want to see how good I can be that night. See if I can do it right this time. That alone will keep it going strong for you, I think.
Pick a good play. That's the first rule.
That's right.
Hi, my name's Todd Murray, and I'm curious to how the audition process was different when most of you were going to open calls and just starting through. Today we get to an open call half hour beforehand, and there's already 200 people signed up. And I'm curious if that's always been the case, and if it hasn't, what is the same? What is the one thing that we need to transcend to the directors, the casting directors, to be hired? What is the same?
Good question. Can I just say something? We don't have the same kind of open calls as you have here. I mean, people don't just turn up. You have to have an appointment. But one thing which I think is important in any audition, before you do anything else, is to make sure that you're right for the part. And don't go if they're looking for a tall, slim, blonde 30-year-old, if you're short, fat, and nearly 50. I mean, I think that's one of the first things to think about. And secondly, I think that as you go on thinking that you have a chance and not thinking, oh, there are 200 people here, I have no chance. At least go on thinking, I might get this. I don't know if that's helpful. But
it is, because that is a wonderful attitude. It's very important. The first Broadway show I got, Do Re Mi, I was hired the first day, the first hour, and they had me come back and watch the auditions, which was kind of an appalling thing, as I was like 20 years old going, this is all... But they really want to find someone. They really want to like somebody and find someone, and you have to always remember that. Yeah. And they hope it's you. I mean, and
every time.
Every time, yeah.
I have to tell young people, I'm not very encouraging, because I take my hat off to them if I had a hat to take off, because if I were starting out today, I don't know if I could take it. The competition and the numbers and the rather low increase in opportunity, if any. I don't know if I could could face that kind of a challenge.
I'm glad
So I
that
salute you.
Didn't start that way. I'm glad that you're here today.
Hi, my name is Christine Toy. I have a question for Ms. Collins. I wanted to know how different was the experience of making the film of Shirley Valentine from doing the play?
Very different, particularly for me, because it's the first film I've made. I mean, I've done television, obviously, but it was the first time I'd done a feature film. And also, the film has all the other characters in it. So I had the pleasure of reacting to other actors rather than just to myself. And it was actually, for me, a most delightful experience, because I had a very old and experienced director called Lewis Gilbert, who is one of the least egotistical and most supportive people I've ever worked with. And I really enjoyed the process of filmmaking. Now, it was a little different, because I obviously had the character under my belt. Now, I don't know what it would be like if I was thrown in.
Did you make the film here or in England?
I made it in Mykonos, in Greece. Wasn't that wonderful? And also in Liverpool and London.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Roz Dunn, and I'd like to ask this question of the panel, and particularly Madeline Kahn. Is timing, particularly in comedy, instinctive, or can it be taught?
Think very
Yeah, we've
carefully.
just been talking about it.
The word timing, is something that I learned after realizing that I, in fact, have what is called timing. I liken it to a kind of a musical ability. That's the way it feels to me. I also have a musical ability, and I had it since I was little. I can't claim any credit for it. It's just like an ability for math or leaping or any other ability that you kind of have. I don't know what it's composed of, but it feels mostly like an ear for music. And there is, to me, a certain music in the writing and in the group which then forms to say the writing. And it can ideally feel like you're in a small musical chamber orchestra. And so with comedy, that's how it feels to me.
Okay. My name is John Francis Fox. I'd like to ask the panel, how much do you rely on the director? What do you do when you think he's wrong? And what do you do when you disagree with the playwright's text?
Is that all?
That'll take about 3 days.
With the playwright's stance?
The playwright's text.
Why don't we just take one? Let's just go with the director.
I hate to lose that.
Go with the director. Let's just go with the director. How do you work with the director?
Everyone says it. I'll tell you what, I'll answer that because mine isn't here. No, he was lovely. I think that the director ideally should initially create a warm place for the actors to flower in. I don't think that he should impose on them something which doesn't come out of them. I think having done that and having seen how they interact, he should then try to orchestrate what they have to offer.
I believe that there is such a thing called focus, and the director is essentially there to inform the actors when and where that focus is taking place, as well as what you said.
Thank you.
My name is... excuse me? Were you going to say something?
I don't really feel we answered this
Yes.
question. I mean, these people want to know the truth. You know what I'm saying?
I just feel, I mean, in musicals, I have done plays, but musicals are quite a technical productions, and they do rely on your own individuality a lot, and whatever your gift is. I think they really do rely on that. When I feel the director hasn't helped me, I just keep going. I mean, you really do have to take care of yourself and be honest with the text and do the music and just keep going, because most of the time I have felt I have not had the help I wanted or the inspiration.
Yeah.
But if they hire everyone correctly, that's like in our show, our whole cast is so gifted, that alone would get it going.
I'd like to ask a question. With Jerry, for example, as a director, Was it blocked out so, and this is the way you do it, and you don't change from this? Or does he give you, this is the way I would like it to be, and arrive at it in your own manner?
Pretty much the latter. There's a great deal of give and take. He is very amenable to suggestions that the actors might come up with. But ultimately, he acted in a way that I feel most comfortable with. I do believe that you do need some voice when there's a collaborative effort like that. Someone has to make a final decision. And if people resist that, it really creates chaos. Whether you agree with it or not, ultimately, it's like a marriage, really, isn't it? In some ways, you have to agree that somewhere along the line, someone has to make a final yes or no. And I think once you accept that view, things become somewhat easier. But
thank you. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm Tracy Sallows, and I have a question concerning researching a role. The minute you get the role, do you begin to research it, or do you wait till you're working with the director to see which way he's going to take it? And just if there's how much or what type, do you have a particular method in researching?
Let me ask you a question in response. I don't want to, but how many roles have you looked at or done that needed research?
It depends on the type of the play. I find I do a lot of research when I'm doing Shakespeare and that kind of thing. This isn't my question, by the way. So I was just trying to phrase it in such a way that, because I know you guys do a ton of research, so I was trying to...
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Hands up those who do
Well,
research. I said hands up those who do research.
I do some, or I have in the past.
Sometimes a little.
But not an enormous amount. I think it depends on...
I think in the classics,
if it is a period...
It depends. I know some actors who do a lot of research, and it's fine for them, and they're good also, it doesn't destroy... they're also imaginative and creative, on top of that, it's sort of like an extra layer that they do. And I think I've started, in the past few years to do, I never used to do any, and I think I've started to do a little bit more because I think it's harder to be good the older that you get. So, cover my bases. Yes, I did do some research for Heidi. I was here at CUNY, actually, at Linda Knocklin's graduate art history class. I visited. Didn't understand what they were talking about, but I went.
Hi, my name is Josh Pearl. I was wondering if there's someone in your lives who's been a big influence in your decision to be be an actor or anything.
I've already mentioned mine.
Yes, right. I think we all have.
Paul Schills did it for me, I think, a lot.
I think that someone once answered this, your family, because you're going to need them to support you. Would you come along?
And they did.
Hi, my name is Chris McGarry, and even though you're all starring in Broadway productions now, I was just wondering, do you still study acting, or any or all of you?
I worked with a Russian actor 2 years ago who didn't speak English, so we both spoke French to each other, and he took some classes in the Stanislavski method, which I was not familiar with, and I found it magic.
I study singing still. Working, I haven't taken an acting class in a while. Your time gets tight. I think it's hard to do it all.
I also wanted to ask you what happened to your arm.
I broke my arm. I fell down on my day off. But I'm in the show. So it's okay, thank you.
But you're still being the witch.
Oh, sure. But I cannot climb Rapunzel's tower. That's the only thing I can't do. Climb up her hair. I miss it.
Ms. Dussault, earlier you mentioned the lack of musicals on Broadway, which makes song and dance people like me very sad. Do you or any of the other panelists have any convictions or ideas to remedy this situation? I'm young. I still have a few more years to go. Let's get more musicals out there.
I don't know. It is scary. It's very scary to me. And it was funny because last week I was so depressed about it. I started thinking about it, and I just thought, what is going to happen? And then someone said, gosh, I just saw a run-through of a new musical. It's great. Grand Hotel. They said it was just wonderful. I went, oh, goody, because somewhere, someplace, there is always going to be somebody writing a musical. I mean, there just will be. But it is hard. You have to do what I do. You go out of town and do one, or go do stock.
It's the economics that are dreadful. That's the problem. I don't think artistically it has nothing.
Yes, because there's the space. You see empty theaters all over the city.
It's just too expensive.
Well, someday we'll come back to the bare stage principle.
Do you have any suggestions?
I think the theater community and leaders of the various factions of the unions and of the actors' unions and the crafts people and the producers and all should get together. I'm astonished that something isn't being done in a more productive way, with some kind of plan, at least to discuss it. Apparently, there's very little of that.
A musical theater alliance now. All the major summer musical theaters have formed a group to try to really to start new things that then they will send around to all those theaters.
Costs have got to
But
come
I
down.
think
the costs are.
made the point that it's the unions that you have to get together.
We
Has
should
your
all get
union
together.
done anything about this in helping?
Our union?
They-
About the...
No, I don't know that much. I don't really, I'm not one who attends the union meetings very much, I must confess. But I don't know if they are or not. I suspect they're not from the thing.
And I would venture to say that if you'll examine the costs of a theatrical production, you will not find our union costs the throat-cutting ones.
Yes, indeed.
But there are the other ones, though.
Yes, all.
As
But
a
it's a serious
as a
situation.
visitor to this city, I'm under the impression that it is not musicals that are so falling in numbers, but straight plays.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, I think that there seem to be quite a lot of musicals on here, many of which appear to have come from England, but they, but they're not in the tradition of what I call a real musical. They seem to rely more on spectacle and scenery and things leaping out of the sky than on actually performers singing and dancing, which is what we had always loved about the Broadway musical, and which we could never emulate and still can't. I mean, our musicals are still not what I would call a real musical, although they're here.
You're doing rather well with them.
They are doing well, but they're more to do with the scenery and spectacle and getting value for money than to do with the real old-fashioned kind of musical. That's why I adored Jerome Robbins' Broadway.
Have you thought of having a resident theater company in New York so that you could do straight plays here in New York?
We have a group in Los Angeles that is working towards this. We started off with radio. We have about 40 players, name players, and radio has been a wonderful binding process for us because it doesn't take up a lot of time.
That's a very interesting thing I've read about.
Yeah, and it binds us together. We get to go through a lot of plays. We get to smell each other out, feel each other out, and we're not committed to a long term. But eventually we will dedicate ourselves to doing a couple of plays, and we've even been asked to appear in London for about a 6 or 8 week period.
What about doing it in New York?
I have no objections to that.
Well, my experience, if I may interject here, is one that we've tried it already. The Repertory Theater at Lincoln Center, which is now being run by Greg Mosier from, had been tried, of course, originally with Kazan and Robert Whitehead. The problem then, and when I was there for a good number of years with Jules Irving, the problem is you can't get actors to sign up for any length of time, and the more prominent the actor, the more difficult it is for him to commit himself or her to commit themselves to a repertory situation. That's always been the problem. First of all, they don't pay enough, they can't pay enough, and they just cannot be asked to stay for that length of time. It's something that I don't see a solution to, except something on the order of what they have in London, where they have a kind of a loose collaboration, don't they?
At the National, you mean?
At the National. Well, you're part of the company, but it's very flexible. They have a considerably
How long are
different-
you expected to contribute time in terms of the
Too long, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, they usually want you to commit for 18 months, so maybe 1 or 2 plays.
18 months?
Yes. But actually, I think that the idea, although it's a wonderful idea because you do get to work with the same people, the idea of a repertory of any kind is incestuous because I think that you become tricksy and used to playing with the same people, and I think change is what the theatre is about.
But I think the
there
changing
should
of the
always be new
roles and
people.
working with different people in different
people,
roles
yeah.
is very important.
Yeah,
and just as you get name performers to come in and take over in a role, I think you can get name performers to come into a company for a limited amount of time.
On the other hand, though, the very idea of working with the same people over an extended period of time, I think is, there's room for argument here, obviously, is what contributes to great theatre in many, many instances. I mean, when people know each other so well that you kind of transcend the ordinary relationship that you do with a stranger.
Sometimes, but sometimes
well, look at the history
you
of the
lack
theater. I mean,
the excitement.
The great theater in most of our, I mean, the National Theater and the Royal Shakespeare, the Comédie Française, the Moscow Art Theater, we're all rep companies.
The group theater.
The group theater, indeed. I mean, that's why I think the great theater eventually
It's all
will
to the
emanate
benefit
from.
of the audience,
And I think it's
too.
sad that we don't have that situation in the States.
I agree
I mean,
with
it's
you.
a
I think
disgrace that we
somehow
don't have a national theater
we
of some
should get
sort.
it. And we can go on, and once more, it is my sad duty to interrupt this wonderful panel. It's these knowledgeable people in every field of the theater, these performers who have come to tell us what it's like to work in the theater and as part of the American Theater Wing seminars on performance. And these seminars are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And I'm Isabel Stevenson. I'm president of the American Theater Wing, and this is but one of our year-round programs. I thank you all for being here, and I thank this panel for giving so much of their time and their efforts to us. We are indeed grateful to you. Thank you.
Researchers who get stuck.